Hey, Bus Bench babes. Beth here. I'm doing an interview with Jacqueline Stevens, lovingly known to most as Jax, and she is the founder of the Joy with Jax blog, and she's a soulful life coach. I think we're going to have a super joyful conversation today, and I'm so glad you're here for it. Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. All right, Bus Bench babes. This is Beth here, and I'm doing an interview today with a super awesome friend of mine. Her name is Jacqueline, but she is affectionately known as Jack. She's a Yale certified soulful alignment coach. Like, how sexy does that sound? She guides burnt out high achievers back to their empowered, centered, connected lives. Like, oh my God, it like gives me goosebumps. So Jax, thanks for being here. It's awesome that you're joining me today. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to be here, Beth. And yes, awesome friend indeed of long time. So I'm thrilled to, have a conversation about wellness and overwhelm and living your best life.
Right? Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, my name is Jacqueline Stevens. Like you said, I live in Los Angeles currently, but I really kind of identify as what I call a Cali-sodan, California Minnesotan.
You and I met in Minnesota,
we did,
of course.
Yes. I lived in Minneapolis for 10 years post high school, my college, and the beginning of my career, and then relocated to Los Angeles about 8 years ago. And I had grown up in Northern California, but really had moved around a lot in my life. And so I have become this master of transitions, not because I necessarily wanted to, but because I was really more forced to. And, my journey to coaching started, it's really been my whole life, but a couple of years ago, I went through what I call my dark night of the soul, where I had gotten up against some pretty major things in my life. I wasn't happy in my relationship. I wasn't happy with my job and was really struggling. And so the last couple of years has been this massive transition into becoming a coach and working with clients in one-on-one and in groups to really support them with achieving what it is they want to achieve in their life and really living a life that is so empowered and emboldened with my secret sauce, which is joy.
I love that. I love that. Well, okay, so you and I met. Can we talk about our backstory
Yes,
a little
our
bit?
meet cute, please.
Right? So you were the general manager of the Mac store that I went to all the time in Minneapolis. It was like in uptown, like trendy part of town. And I was in there all the time. And thank God you were always working when I was in there. And I would describe you to someone as someone with an old soul. I don't know if you align with that, but I always thought that we were the same age, and not that you looked my age, but because it felt like your life experiences were just so much deeper and then when you told me how old you were, and I'm like, I feel like she's just so much more mature than whatever age you were at the time, because I'm like, there's like a pretty considerable age gap between us, but I felt like just on an emotional level, you and I were like on the same playing field. So that's why I was like, oh, she's just my age. And like, you were still in college. We weren't even anywhere near the same age. And so and then kind of like, we were like, I was your customer. So it's not like we were like pals and went out for happy hour and that sort of thing. And then when I started following you on social media and like seeing like your transition to California and what that looked like and your cute boyfriend at the time and Toby, your schnoodle, like it just like, I'm like, oh gosh, like I almost wish like you and I would have become better friends when you lived in Minneapolis. So I feel like you and I have become good friends via
For
social media
sure.
the last 8 years that you've
And
been
we did
gone.
have that meeting in
So
Hawaii. You can't forget about the time that we met up
yeah.
in
Oh,
Hawaii.
true. Yeah. I'm like, hey, I want to be in Hawaii. Let's go. And we like met at this food truck park and hung out. Like that was so
So
much
funny.
fun.
I can't remember one of us, well, we were obviously both there, but neither one of us knew. And one of us saw that the other one was there and was like, oh my God, let's meet up. And so I remember that being such an incredible time because just like you, it was like we really got to know each other more through social media, but had really built this amazing
Yeah.
foundation at Mac on Hennepin and Lake in Hennepin.
I know. Isn't that crazy? So yeah, it's just been really awesome to see like your whole career transition. Like I know, like when I first met you, like how in school was so important and getting like that dream job was so important. And then all of a sudden I'm like, life coaching? Like what's going on? Like I feel like I missed a whole big piece of this equation. So I'm excited that we're going to talk about that
Me
here
too.
today so that everyone can learn more
Me
about
too.
it.
And I want to say the same thing
That's so
about you,
cool.
Beth, was when we met, you were doing nursing and you
Yep.
were just, we were both in really different places. And I think that's been one of the
Completely.
amazing things about you. And I think about friendship in general is that how the growth and elevation can really take place. And then there's those times where you get
Hmm.
to really come together and talk about and discuss why we got to where we got. And I think what's beautiful that the old soul in me is like, we're not really that different, right? There's so much similar
Yeah.
between two people and their
Well, and we
journeys.
both have like a church background.
Yes.
So like there's like a lot of different little things that are this interesting
Yes.
connectedness. We both have a huge passion for travel and exploring the world. So
Yes.
like the universe, God, whatever you believe, like I feel like just aligned us to become friends and I'm glad that that
Me
happened.
too, Beth. Me too.
Well, okay. So one of the main reasons, like when Christy and I started this podcast, we were like kind of brainstorming show topics and like, okay, who are we going to bring on as guests and what that's going to look like? And one of the very first people, I had two people in mind. I've already interviewed one, and you're the second person where I'm like, you just feel so aligned with what our mission is. Our mission is like living a life by design and creating a life and having a long table where everybody's welcome, but really overall like finding joy in life. If you don't have joy in your life, like literally what's the whole point of it? And so I'm like, oh, I know who I want to interview, and voila, here we are.
Awesome. Yeah, I all of that resonates so much when I was listening to the podcast and when I see the Instagram page, the living the life by design is just ooh, gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. Well, like tell us like how what led you to this path of being a coach? Like I feel like there's a story. I know a little bit of the story, but I think everyone should hear your
Yeah.
story.
So, a little bit about my background. I grew up in the beauty industry. And so it was working behind counters I worked at Estee Lauder and Clinique and then Mac for years and years. And it really became this big part of my identity. And I loved what I was doing so much because I got to meet really amazing people like yourself. I have another dear friend that I was in her wedding, both of her weddings. She had two weddings, one in Nigeria, one in Minneapolis. And so,
Oh, I've seen pictures of that
yes. And
wedding.
so through,
Yeah, she's
she is
stunning.
stunning. But through my experiences at Mac, I just got to meet incredible people. And I also loved leading teams and seeing people grow and develop. And that's really what I guess, kind of my secret sauce always was. Um, I ended up taking a break from college when I was in Minneapolis and worked full time at Mac. And then I went back to school because it was really important to me to finish my degree. Um, it- for a lot of different reasons, I think it's important to finish what we start sometimes, but I just knew I didn't want to be in retail forever. And so I thought that getting my degree would really open me up to doing something different. And so when I graduated, I moved into the corporate setting And it was either retail brands, whether it was fashion or beauty. And so I continued on that trajectory. And I started developing educational programs for retailers. So, teaching people how to sell or about a product. And so I was always very consumer or client facing. And I did really well. Like I was very successful in my job, and I kept getting promoted and recruited to different places. And I was also at that time really in a long-term relationship. And um although I was doing those things, I wasn't living my life by design. I was still really living
So
my
interesting.
life in default because I had beauty on my resume and because of X, Y, and Z. I just kind of got put into these places that I thought that I wanted to be, but after
Hmm.
being in them, I really recognized I don't know if this is really what I want to do long term. And so, I kept really like shushing this inner voice that I have. I was like, shh,
Hmm.
be quiet. Like, I can't listen to that. I don't want to hear it. And it kept doing the same thing in my relationship where it was like, he's not for you. And I just kept shushing it, like, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And so I really,
But he's so
so
cute.
cute, and he was so kind, and there's so much good stuff about him, but I knew that it wasn't for me, but I didn't know what to do about it. And so it
Hmm.
actually started to turn into more of like chronic health problems through, rashes I was getting, and my skin was getting inflamed, and had gained weight and was just I was working out and unable to lose weight, and all of these things. But most of all, I wasn't checking in with myself, and so it really got to the place where I clinically burnt out. I was under so much stress and so much pressure that I had to take a break. So I ended up leaving my long-term relationship after a lot of deliberation and a lot of thought. Um, I went on a trip to Bali with my two best friends, and
It felt like your eat, pray,
it
love
it
moment in life.
totally was my eat, pray, love. It really was. And when I went, I hadn't gone on an actual vacation, like a real vacation for me, in so long. It was always something where it was both my boyfriend and I, but this was really like a soul searching moment for me. And I told myself, when I come back, I'm gonna have this like spiritual awakening, and everything is gonna be different. And when I came back, everything was different with me, but everything in my life was still the same. And so that
Oh, that's an interesting place to be,
it
I'm
was
sure.
really complicated because I had to really make these decisions. So I had left my relationship, and I ended up leaving my job. And I went back to the drawing board to understand, what is it that I really want to do? And I knew ultimately what I wanted to do was serve and support people. And I thought it could be two different things. I looked at doing therapy and going back to school, and becoming a psychologist. And that program was just long and intense, and also really focused on helping people heal, right? Therapy is really, to me, I use this example, it's about looking in the rear view mirror and assessing what's really
Hmm.
happened and rectifying what's happened in the past. Coaching, on the other hand, is all about being in the driver's seat and like looking forward. And you might look in the
Yeah.
rear view mirror and assess some things from the past, but never do I take my eyes off the road. Never do I look away from what the journey is to turn my head around and look in the back seat. And so I really recognized that coaching was what I wanted to do because it was all about growth. It was all about development. It was all about tapping into different energies or emotional wavelengths to really understand, assess, and know who we are so that we can get what we want. And so it was through that. So sometimes when people are like, how'd you get into coaching? My answer is clumsy. It was very clumsy. It wasn't necessarily super strategic, but I think the beauty of it now as I look at what I'm doing with my work and with my clients and at my background, it just all makes sense. It has all come together into this.
Do you feel you're better at what you do because of where you landed in life personally?
Absolutely. I mean, and I'll kind of define joy for people because I think this definition just really gives understanding. So to me, happiness is like having something or getting something. It's like something that we get from outside of us that makes us happy, versus
Okay.
joy is something that's like deeply from within. And one of my favorite quotes from an incredible author named Rob Bell is that joy wraps its arms around the entire human experience. And so it wraps its arms
Ooh, that's
around,
nice. I like
yeah,
that.
like grief and anger and frustration and all of these harder emotions, but it also has its arms
Mhm.
around joy, right? So it has capacity to really hold it all. And so that's the work that I do with clients is really, it's not about not having bad days. It's not about not being frustrated. It's about recognizing that when we are frustrated or when we do have bad days, that's really data for us to be able to assess what's working and what isn't working in our lives so that we can continue to
Mhm.
develop clarity so that we can always surround ourselves with joy regardless of where we're at.
That's awesome. Well, like something that we hear very regularly over here at the Bus Bench Babes is women that are in careers that absolutely do not bring
Yeah.
joy or happiness or any of those sort of adjectives into life. Um, and they want to get into real estate and like experience life on a different
Yeah.
level. Like what kind of advice would you have for that
Yeah,
gal?
so for the person that is in their role and is unhappy but knows that they want something else, it's here's what I would say. It's not about saying goodbye to one thing to say hello to something else. Like you don't have to quit your job and do this other thing. It's about gaining clarity, and it's about knowing that even if you can't become a real estate agent maybe tomorrow, it could be a 6 month or a 9 month or a 1 year plan. So I think it's about looking at where we're at as a bridge to where we're going and recognizing that change and transformation doesn't always happen overnight, but allowing that call of, if something within you is saying this isn't right, I don't want to do this, then that's a call to action. And so it could just be one little step on a daily basis, but it's available, but it doesn't have to be scary.
What give me an example of like a little step that you would tell someone like, okay, here's something that you can do to like start working in that forward direction.
Yeah, I would say make weekly, I would say as a weekly practice, get in the habit of writing down what was really challenging about your week in the last week, whether it's specifics at work, whether it was a project or a meeting, what it was emotionally, right? Like where your emotions were caught up in that last week. Um, and then also making a list of what does really work, what is really making you happy. So it's like building on what it's recognizing what isn't working and taking action steps from there. And it's recognizing what is working in your life and building on that from there.
Mm, that's really good.
Yeah. It's simple, it's
That's really
powerful, and it's
good.
something that you can really build on too. And I think for a lot of people that might sound like it's difficult, right? It's kind of hard to take the first next step, especially when you're
Mhm.
frustrated. A lot of us are looking for a solution that's outside of ourselves, right? Like, is real estate the thing that's going to bring me happiness? And the recognition
Yeah.
is it's really about you have to bring yourself that happiness. And so knowing what I say turns you on and turns you off
Yeah.
are so important. And I think a lot of times as women, we forget to really listen to our bodies. And so this isn't a practice of getting back into your body, into yourself, and recognizing what are the things that I truly enjoy and what are the things that I literally cannot stand. And so much comes from that list, even just your own mental
Mhm.
clarity.
Okay, so let's transition that to like a relationship
Yeah.
or a friendship. Like, do you use the same sort of practice in your coaching, or do you start looking at that differently
No, I
too?
think that that's absolutely another great thing. So you could do it specifically with relation, like the your partnership or your marriage. You could use it with a specific friend or friendship group if you're feeling like you're not aligned to this kind of community that you've been aligned with.
Mhm.
You could do it with your family. And what the really interesting thing is if you do it in all these areas of your life, what you're going to start to notice is these themes, right? These common themes that
Yeah.
kind of show up. And so through this list too, oftentimes we look at, our partner or our career or, a friendship that it's not giving me what I need. But so much of this work is like, well, how am I not showing up? Or how am I showing up that maybe is supporting this? Or am I not asking for what I need? Or am I not setting that boundary? Or am I not, telling them that I'm too tired to X, Y, and Z? So you can get a lot of clarity just kind of by this assessment about self first, because a lot of times we really do
Hmm.
think that it's something that's outside of us, and so much it really boils down to getting clear on us, our core values, our core beliefs, and what it is that we really want.
That's crazy. Like, what is the biggest thing that you deal with clients? Like how your coaching business has evolved. Is it like career things similar to what you dealt with that got you into coaching in the first place, or is it other
Such a
things?
good question. I love this question. So it's really interesting. Um I tend, the people that I tend to coach are these high achievers, like really ambitious, high achieving, yet overwhelmed achievers. And so that comes in a couple of areas of life. For sure, it displays itself professionally, but it also displays itself
Hmm.
personally. So most people that I start coaching will kind of come in with one particular, quote, issue,
Yeah.
pain point, right? And it might be professionally, but it almost always I will coach people on professional and personal. And how I really distinguish that is it's all about relationship. What I really do is I relationship coach with people, because how you show up at work and what your expectations on your job are is all about your relationship with your work. And same with your partnership. It's about
Okay.
how you relate to your partner, what your expectations of your partnership are, how you're showing up in that partnership. And at the end of it all, those two things are a true reflection of the self, right? So, if you're in a
Yeah.
codependent relationship, well, guess why you're in a codependent relationship? Because you're codependent, right? You can't blame the other
Right.
person when you're like quote half of the problem. And so I
Right.
really work with people, even in relationship therapy. When you go to a therapist, most people will be like, well, I'm here because they're the problem, right? It's like they're the problem, not
Uh-huh.
me.
Fix them,
Fix them.
please.
Like, we're here because there's something drastically wrong with them. But
Yeah.
it's really about, like, okay, some things are really about self, right? So I help people with, okay,
Hmm.
well, what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that are really bothering you about your partnership or your career? And what are the things that you really desire? And then it's about looking at the other, whether it's the person, whether it's the job, and seeing how it lines up, and then making a plan of how you want to move through that. Do you want to find a new career? Do you want to just get happy in this career and then build your side hustle? Do you want to um, start a relationship, or have you been not in a relationship but you really want to be in a relationship and you don't know how to do it? So
Hmm.
it's all of those. Once you get clear on who you are, what you want, what your values are, that makes everything else, that's when you become this like magnetic being where you just start pulling, like attracting things to you, whether it's people or
Okay.
opportunities. And I've played in that space for the last couple of years, and it's just been really For myself, it's been so incredibly, I don't even know how to describe it. It's been amazing, but then to also be able to see the transitions and transformations that I see my clients go through too. It's my job's like crack. I can't get enough of it. It's so good.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
What's been the most surprising thing about coaching and being in coaching?
That's such a good question. And I would say that, um, and it's all goes back to who we are and how that it affects no matter where we go. But I have been, in the past, I was prone to burnout and prone to, being a perfectionist and, wanting everything to be perfect and be great. And so that that's followed me into my coaching career, whether it's,
Mhm.
over delivering or, um, working too much, like loving my job too much that I'm kind of burning out again. And so it's about, again, being able for me to look at the past,
Mm.
know what my patterns are, and then work with that energy now in a lot more of a different way. I mean, the way that I burn out now is very different from the way that I burnt out then, but I still am recognizing that I am that same person and I am still in that pattern of burnout. And so it's about working with what you know to be true about yourself and slowing that down so that it doesn't hinder you from being able to move forward.
That's so cool. What else do you find like really rewarding about coaching?
What else? Um, I mean, so much. I think that when you really, I work with clients in a really deep way. There's a lot of coaches that might do something like that's very tangible, right? So it might be, I
Mhm.
help women lose 20 pounds after they have a baby, right? Or I help women get to
Okay.
six figures in X, Y, and Z. So it's these external goals,
Okay.
like outside of
Yep.
ourselves. And there's definitely value in that, but the coaching that I do is deeply transformational. It's like inner work. So again, values,
Okay.
beliefs, who I am, what I want. And so through doing that work, I think one of the coolest things is again seeing my own clients, their transformations. But I also think what's so cool is how they really start to just up level everybody around them. And I use
Ooh, that's a good
Yeah, I
one.
use the example of you're like a tuning fork. We're all these tuning forks for energy in our life. And so I'm this like powerful tuning fork that's working with clients in these really
Mhm.
amazing ways. And then they become tuning forks in their own lives. And so their
Oh, that's
partnerships
awesome.
shift, their work relationships shift, their relationships with their families shift. And so it really goes to show how, doing this deep work can really affect you and everybody around you. I mean, I've had people that weren't sure about the relationships that they were in. And then we go through this process. And then they were sure that the relationship they were in was the one that they really wanted, because they stopped pointing the finger at the partner and started really taking
Yeah.
accountability and seeing their partner and themselves in a really different and much more collaborative way.
It sounds super fulfilling.
Yeah, not gonna lie. I feel lucky that I was lucky and grateful that I had the opportunity and just continued to knock on the door and I didn't give up.
I love that. I love that. Um, all right, so what would be 3 actionable items, like, listeners could literally do today to find more joy in life?
Yeah. So 3 actionable items. The first one is press pause. Like just press
What does
pause
that mean? Like,
and where you're.
with just in general and, like, give me an
Yeah,
example.
so in our lives, a lot of times when I say press pause, it just means slow down. It's like slow down and recognize
Okay.
that joy isn't something that's outside of you, it's inside of you. So the first step is to really
Okay.
just recognize like it's available to me. It's more like, how do I want to get it? So step one is really like pause, joy is available. And the second step is assessing what what is it that you find that really brings you joy? Is it being outside in nature? Is it connection with Is it like deep connection with your community, whether it's friends or whether it's with family? Is it time with your pet? Is it cooking? So getting really clear on what it is that actually is bringing you joy. And then
Mhm.
it's the third thing is like assess what's holding you back from that, right? So what is holding me back from having time outside or spending quality time with my family or with cooking or whatever it is that's bringing you joy. Um, and then it's about recognizing that you get to make a choice, right? Like how do you want to get that? And so sometimes it's just the process of recognizing what really does bring us joy, where it's like, oh yeah, like it's not that hard. It's not that it's that hard.
Yeah.
It's that we're holding on so often to either thought patterns or ideas that joy isn't available to us. And the number one thing I hear from clients is, especially incoming clients, is I don't have time, right? It's like I don't have time. I don't have enough time for X, Y, and Z. And it's about recognizing you have time for all this other stuff in your life. So it's just about
Mhm.
being able to, again, press that pause to be able to slow down and get back to understanding what it is that really brings you joy. And I think I would say the first thing is it's always in our body. So when we can get in touch with our body, whether it's through a walk or dance or music, or something that brings us out of our headspace and really into our body
Mhm.
is the easiest way to get to joy. For me, it was yoga. It was just like,
Okay.
I don't know what, when I left my relationship and I left my job, I had no sense of normalcy with my schedule. And I was like, what do I like? Who am I? What do I do? Like,
What do I
what
do
do
with
I
my
do with
time?
my
What's going on?
life? Like, so I lived in the Bay Area at the time. And I mean, I would just started going to yoga like daily. I'd go like the first like 3 or 4 times a week. And then I'm like, it was like, again, like crack. I was like, I got to go back. I got to get more of this because it just felt so good. And for me, it was
Yeah.
what felt so good about I got to finally slow my mind down and not think about
Mhm.
all the things in my life. And I just got to be in my body. So that's why for a lot of people, like I said, it just could be dance. It could be putting on a song that's your favorite song when you're in the middle of the hardest day ever and allowing yourself to press pause and like dance to your favorite song. And I guarantee when you come back to whatever project or person that you have to deal with, it's going to feel different
Mhm.
because you've been able to cultivate that joy through your own experience.
That's so cool. What's the easiest way for you to find joy? Let's say like outside of yoga, because I know
Yeah.
you love yoga.
Outside of yoga. Yeah. I feel like my life really is so full of joy now. I mean, I think, here's a perfect example. I had a hard day the other day and I knew something was coming that I didn't want to deal with, and I'm in my mind. So I'm like, really, I'm trying to figure out all
Mhm.
the answers in my mind. And so sometimes it really is about like just laying down and like taking a nap like a child, like treating yourself tenderly.
Mhm.
But another thing that I do is it's connection. Like I so value the people in my life and I so value my friendships. And so it's just like phone a friend, right? Phone a friend and say,
Your
yeah, my
lifeline,
lifeline,
literally.
totally. So yeah, if it's not moving my body and I can't take a nap, then it is likely going to be phone a friend. And that's going to be my way to get back to joy and to for someone to I think what's beautiful about friendship too is we can reflect back to someone who they are and why we love them. And so
Mhm.
oftentimes when we're in overwhelm or we're in anxiety, we have forgotten ourselves and our power and we're focusing on all this other stuff. And so when we have these deep connections, these deep friendships, people remind you, like they'll remind you of your power and they'll remind you of
Mhm.
why you're doing what you're doing and who you are. And so it's like having cheerleaders on call.
Yeah, I feel like Christy and I have had a lot of those conversations in the last year and a half working
Yeah.
together. Probably her being my cheerleader more than me being hers, unfortunately, where I'm like, I'm what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Is this happening Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. But yeah, like friends are a good mirror for that.
Absolutely.
Like just trying to like, hey, this is you. Look in the mirror.
Yeah. What do
Mm, I
you
love
I can I
that.
ask you, where do you find the most joy,
Yeah.
Beth? Yeah.
Traveling, 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 traveling.
Mhm.
Um, I love exploring new towns.
Mhm.
And I think because it gets me out of my day to day,
Yeah.
like I eat, sleep, and drink real
Yeah.
estate, so it's not like one of those jobs like you go home and you shut it
Yeah.
off. My office is in my home. There's times where it's like I love my clients and I also need to just have time to
Yeah.
myself. Like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I working hard? I'm working hard because I love to be able to create a big life and travel. And yeah, I was laying at the pool in the beach in Spain this last week, and I'm like, yeah, this is why we
This
do
is why we
this.
do it.
And it's not to say I didn't work. I worked while I was there. I was on my computer probably a couple hours every day, but hanging out with
Mhm.
my niece and just like spending time and seeing Spain through the eyes of an 18-year-old and talking about like real life stuff and crazy stuff. And it was
Yeah,
awesome.
so for you, it's like adventure, getting out of
Yeah.
the everyday, especially for you as someone who
Yep.
works from home. Um,
Yeah.
and
Well, and last year during COVID, I had
yes,
to get out and go walk every
yes,
afternoon. I'm like,
yeah,
if I have to be on another Zoom, I might
die.
kill myself. I mean, there were just days where I'm like, I can't do
Yeah,
this. Mark left for work every
yeah,
day. He's in law
yep,
enforcement, so it's
yep,
not like all my other friends that were at home with 20 people. I'm like, it's just me and my
yep,
thoughts here alone. So I would just go for a walk
yeah,
every day, just to get change of scenery,
totally.
move my
Yeah.
body.
And that's the thing
Yeah,
is it's again what you're saying, that's embodiment when you're like, I'm stuck in my head, right? Like it's only me.
yeah,
Here I am in the house.
right,
And everywhere I
right.
turn, there I am, right? Like, oh, there she
Yep.
is in the mirror. Oh, there she is. Like, and so getting into
Yeah,
our bodies, taking that walk is basically a way of shutting down the brain and being like, okay, I'm in my body.
yes,
I'm experiencing something different. And,
yeah,
I lived in Minnesota for the beginning of 2020. So I experienced a winter in
yeah.
Minnesota.
You and I got to see
We
each other
did.
one time before the damn world shut
I
things
know,
down.
and I was so grateful for that, but I was also just, like, grateful to be in inclement weather, and still it was
Yeah,
just so fun to be like, "Oh, you can actually go on a walk when it's cold, and it could still potentially be enjoyable," and I didn't know what that was gonna look like or
yeah,
feel like after living in California for 7 years. There was a
yeah.
sweetness to the difference of experience, and so, yeah, never underestimate the power of our bodies to bring us back home, which is our home is joy. And so when we're not feeling in joy, it generally means that we're stuck in some kind of thought pattern. And so if we're able to loosen the grip of that and really just get plugged back into the body, I mean, it'll change. It'll change your life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I can see why coaching is like you're enjoying it and that your clients are getting great results because I always like feel enlightened after I have conversations with you.
Oh, thank
So it
you.
makes sense that like this was the
Yes.
way the universe
Well,
led
and
you.
when you said earlier too, I love hearing when people think that I'm an old soul because it's been like that my whole life. And I think,
It doesn't surprise me one bit
yeah.
because that's how I've always described
And I
you.
think a lot of it had to do with all of my moving growing up and this like constantly starting
Hmm.
over and, how difficult that was as a kid to really um to do that start over. And so I think I was forced in a way to really get wise before my
Hmm.
years. Um but yeah, the wisdom comes from I think having to go through that experience and then just being so super plugged in to emotions and really recognizing that they're our superpower. And I think for a long time I really tried to hide that until I just couldn't hide it anymore. And then when I recognized,
Don't women in general tend to do
yes,
that though? I feel like I have for so much of my
yeah,
life.
absolutely,
You don't find your voice or you don't you you suspect you have a superpower, but you don't know what to do with it, or you don't think it's
Or it's not
acceptable, or
accepted.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
I mean, I've always been the crier, like the sensitive one. I was
I am too.
so sensitive
Yeah.
growing up, and I I just always felt things really deeply. And now that I recognize that that really is my superpower, that I can help other people
Hmm.
feel and put words to what they haven't been able to, is just such a cool
Hmm.
gift. And I think oftentimes we, for coaches, you become what you wish you had, right? You become what you wish that you could have had access to. And so I only wish that I hired a coach 3 years ago, because I wouldn't have had to have gone through the massive heartbreak that I still would have gone through heartbreak, but I think it would have felt really different. And so if anyone's really
Hmm.
feeling like I'm up against this wall and I'm not sure what to do, then yeah, reach out, because I think that there's something to getting ahead of that curve. I mean, you can still do it when you, like, pardon the French, when shit hits the fan, it doesn't matter. You can still do it.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes
Yeah.
catching it right before makes it a lot easier and helps people really gain clarity and develop a bridge plan versus just like jumping off the ledge, which is what I did.
Thankfully,
My
you landed
parachute came
just
out.
perfectly on your feet.
Yeah.
Right.
The parachute
Yeah, I
came.
feel like the times, like when I've had coaches over the years, and it was similar to like what you talked about. Like I usually go to coach for A,
Yep.
and then we end up talking about B and
Yep.
C and D and E and F, and I'm like, oh my god, this was money well spent in
Oh,
every
that's
sense
great
of
to
the word.
hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the
Oh.
symptom is, that's like when we go to the doctor, right? Like, oh, maybe maybe one thing's off, right? Like, oh, my ankle hurts, or, whatever. And what the, what I really help people do is identify, okay, what are the symptoms, right? Like, what are the symptoms that you're feeling? What are the pain points that you're feeling in your life? And
Hmm.
then it's about kind of digging underneath of that. And so, with developing these long term relationships with people, there's things that we can fix right away that are going to alleviate some of that stress. But then there's a short term strategy of like, how do I get joy in my life now? And then there's the longer term strategy of, okay, what things really need to shift in order for the transformation to happen. So I think that's one of the cool things about the coaching that I do, is you do get these really great short term benefits, but then the long term benefit and the skills that you learn through the coaching process are just life changing. I just had a conversation with a client who, we worked together for a year and we stopped working together a couple of months ago, but we did a catch up call. And it's just so incredible to hear how all the things that she learned in that time are still really actively
Hmm.
supporting her. She's got this toolbox um, of incredible tools that she can use when the times get tough. And that's what my goal is. I don't want to create dependency. You don't No one needs a coach, but if you are looking for accelerating your own growth and development, then a coach could be a really amazing option for you.
I love that. Well, speaking of that, like, where would someone find you?
Yeah.
Where are they going to find you on social or your website? Tell us a
Totally.
little
Yeah,
bit.
so my website, if they want it, I say that like that's my office. Like, come into my office and go to www.joywithjax.com. You can learn more about me, more about my story, the programs, and the coaching offerings that I have. If they're wanting to see even more of me, then I'd say hop on Instagram, and you can find me at Joy with Jax on Instagram. I do
And
videos.
it's Jax,
Yeah,
JAX.
JAX, correct. But that way you can, that's my website's my office. I'd say Instagram is like my living room, right? You can come in and get to know me a little bit more.
I love that.
You could also find me on LinkedIn at Jacqueline Stevens. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So that's more for maybe, a
Okay.
professional crowd. If you're wanting a little bit to be more in my living room, like I said, Instagram, website, all of it.
That's awesome. Well, this has been a super fun conversation. I'm so glad we are able to make Minnesota, California time
Me
zones work here
too.
today. And I feel honored to have you on the
Thank you so
podcast
much.
today. It's
I
been awesome.
feel so special that when you were planning it, you were like, "Oh, I've got a couple people in mind," and I was one of them. So,
Oh yeah, like instantly 2 names popped in my head, and I was telling Christy and describing the two of you, and she's like, yep. When can we get them on the schedule?" I'm like, "All right, we're
amazing.
gonna do
Yeah,
this."
amazing.
So now I'm like, check. I got you two awesome gals checked off my list. I'm like, now I need to like dig deeper into the
Yeah,
archives.
look
I
at you
agree.
creating the life of your design, Beth. Amazing. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, you
trying.
are. Well, you're doing a beautiful job. You're doing a beautiful job. It's been
Oh,
so fun
thank
to
you.
watch.
Thank you. It's been a fun process. So it's just been a good journey, and it took me until my 40s to sort
Mhm.
of just figure out what I wanted in life, till about 40, 44, 45.
And I think
And
that's
so I'm always like,
such a beautiful,
do it younger. Don't take this long. Like I took the long route,
yeah,
and not that it was the bad route. It was a good route for
yeah.
me, but I'm like, there are shorter routes to
Totally.
get there.
Yeah. I think that's such a beautiful model of anyone who's thinking, I've had clients that are close to 60 where it's like it's never too late. It's like never too
Yeah.
late. And so I think so often people even in their late 20s, they're like, I can't do something else. I'm like, what do you mean you can't? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Even in their mid
You just haven't even scratched the
you little
surface.
baby, you
Yeah.
sweet little babies just off the teat. Of course you can do something different. So no matter who you are, no matter where you are, there's always an opportunity for more. And I love what you're saying is there
Absolutely.
is, partially some method to it, but it's also what we're dealt. And no one should ever feel like they're behind on their life. And if you're wanting more, it's available. It's available.
I love that. And that's a perfect way to end this episode. It's available, and go
Go
get
get
it.
it. The juice, I'm always
Yeah.
like, the juice is there for the picking. So you go after the juicy fruit. Like, stop settling for this fruit that is like, doesn't satiate your appetite. There is more juicy fruit that's available. I guarantee it.
Hmm. That's awesome. Well, thank you for being
Thank you,
here.
Beth.
Like, let's wrap up this episode. Like, this was another fun episode, this time with the lovely Jacqueline Stevens. And check her out on any of her social platforms. And once again, like, keep your face off a bus bench and keep celebrating the badass boss babe that you are.
Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us, and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.